hourglass shaped pins, pins with bulbs and beads and coves in them. I pretty well make a simple, straight pin.
Feels good.
It feels good, right. This group is from a chestnut oak burl, and some of you have seen several things I made from that chestnut oak burl. And when I headed in the pickup, they were two big burls that totally filled the back of my pickup. And I cut up one of them pretty well as soon as I got it. And I left the other one out for about a year before I got to it. And that's what it looked like, most of it when I cut it. Some beautiful spalted wood. And these two are the same wood, but dyed. And I do stabilize some of my wood, the punky stuff. And this is stabilized with clear resin. These are stabilized with dyed resin. These are the same wood, but from the heartwood. These are, okay. This is a Civil War pin with the, pardon? Yeah, Civil War pin with Stonewall Jackson prayer tree wood. And I sell stuff on Etsy. And this pin I've sold on Etsy since 2015. I've sold over $8,000 of that pin on Etsy. And probably another couple of thousand every other ways. So that's a pretty good seller on Etsy. A couple of pins with Celtic knot in the pins. And this is a roller ball. I love a roller ball, really writes nice. And this is a fountain pen. And this wood is the Montpelier cedar of Lebanon. And okay, these two, this has, I bought the blanks. They're the die cut blanks. And this one is spalted maple. And what I do is I turn it to size, almost to size, not quite. And then I dye it black, sand it again, and it leaves some parts black where the dye is soaked in more. And then I dye it red. So I got double dyed, and that comes out pretty good.
Why the black? Why don't you go right to the red?
Because then it's all red. Look at that. It's got a dark and light, dark and red figure. So,
it's real pretty.
So you dye it black, then sand it off. Well, where the black soaks in more, it's still black, but the rest of it is clear wood. And then you dye it red. And pardon? The aniline dye. I'm not sure what it's called. Also, I use leather dye a lot. I use red and black leather dye. I haven't used Indian ink. But another one is the dye for aluminite resin. They make a whole set of dye, and you only need a drop of that stuff. So I do use that as well. If anyone's, here's a Penn State, they make a lot of pin kits. I use, these are about all the type of kits I make. I'll do some bullet pins, these bolt action bullet pins, but I don't do all of the various fancy stuff. So anytime anybody has any questions, just stop me. I'm going through, I'll do most of everything that I do here as we go through this, but not everything. The first thing, of course, is to you have your pin blanks, and these are the pin blanks for this type pin. That type pin, this one is called Sirocco, and it's made by Buford Inc. in UK, and it's only sold by Turner's Warehouse. The tube is the same as some of the other pins like Syria, Gatsby. These two pins are Gatsby. The tube is the same for those as for these. The diameter of the outside of the tube is 27/64. So the bit is 27/64 inch. So, and that's all of these and these two. With the this kit from Turner Warehouse is $9.50. It's not a cheap kit. Slimline is probably something that most people start out with. The kits are about just slightly over $2, $2.25, something like that. This is called Comfort Pin, which is one step above the Slimline. It's the 7mm tubes, two different tubes. The only difference in this and the Slimline that I see is this, and it's a larger center. So the pin can be slightly bigger. The Slimline, when you turn a Slimline to the exact size of the pin kit, then you're very, very thin. So I don't like the Slimline. This is called Comfort Pin, and the reason that is, when you buy the kit, it comes with a rubber tip, and you can turn off the bottom part down to the tube and slide the rubber tip on, and it gives you like the comfort tip. And sometimes I'll put it on, sometimes not. If you mess up on one end or the other, then you can go ahead and turn it down and save the pin. So, okay.
I started out like you said with the Slimline and all that, but I don't like turning two pieces. So I use the executive kit, single piece.
Right.
It's a whole lot easier. Turning pins doesn't take a lot of time to do it, but you only have to get one tube right. And so I really, I've had good sales opposed to universal size.
All of these are one tube kits. So basically, if you think about it, you can make two of these in the same length of time you can make one Slimline.
I learned that
So,
real quick.
yep.
What kit do you use for the Stonewall Jackson?
It's a Civil War bullet pin. The two ends are replicas of the Civil War bullets that were used, and the clip is a replica of one of the rifles that was used during the Civil War. So I only do the gunmetal color. You can get copper, you can get brass, you can get chrome, all gold, all kinds of plating, but the only one I've ever made is the gunmetal, which I like the color, and they do sell well. I mean, I sell my stuff to with the intention of helping do a little recovery of all my expenses, but it's not that I'm trying to make a living with it.
Dale, do you send a certification along with that?
There's a little card that comes with it that describes the pin, and I have the card. It's based on the one that was developed by the Woodturners of Virginia and the Central Woodturning Club that made the little cards that were this. And basically, I've redone it and added my name so I don't have to write it in. So basically, that's what goes with every one I sell, similar to that. Okay. The first thing that I would do, of course, is to drill the pin blank. Here we have the pin blank cut to approximately 1/16 inch longer than this, maybe slightly more than 1/16, 3/32, just slightly longer. And there's all kinds of ways to drill it. One is you can buy a set of pin jaws that will fit on your chuck, and you can clamp it in the pin jaws, put your drill bit in the tailstock, and drill it. That a lot of people do it that way. The only concern is if your tailstock and headstock do not line up perfectly, then your hole will be enlarged. So that's not good. So that's a common way. And you don't necessarily have to have pin jaws. If you have a set of regular pin jaws, the 4 jaws that go into your chuck, you can clamp it in that. You don't need to buy the special the pin jaws that you buy for turning pins, drilling pins, is only 2 jaws with the V groove in it. So you're clamping it like that, which centers it. So that's a common way to drill. Another way is you can spend the money to get a drill vise, a special drill vise that when you open it or close it, it will always center itself. So some people do that. I use just a regular old drill press vise. And the one thing that I had to do, because you're putting your blank in at an angle, I file this out just a little to make it a little wider to get this in. Okay, so
3/4 inch square or something like that.
this is probably, normally I try to cut them about 7/8, 3/4 to 7/8. And took 2 pieces of wood like this, cut a V groove in it, and you can do this on the table saw or actually on the bandsaw. Just make sure your V grooves are totally square to this. And so when you clamp that, okay, so it'll go all, I've got room to move it back and forth. So you mark your center, line it up with your drill bit, and I bolt or a clamp, not bolt, I clamp the vise to the drill press. And as long as you're within, 1/16 of an inch with the blank, you're good. Another issue that you will have sometimes is when you go through, your exit will break out. You will have a little blowout at the exit of your drill bit. So if you take something like this, and I just cut a bunch of these at the same time. Okay, now that piece, you tighten it up, make sure it's pressed down on that, and now you have a backup block to prevent the blowout. Most kinds of wood like this, you don't have the problem, but when you stabilize it, it's basically resin, as much or more resin than it is some of the punky wood, and it will blow up. So this will stop it from blowing out like that. So then I drill as many blanks as I'm working on. In this case, these pins, the Gatsby pins, are all 27/64 inch. This pin is 3/8. Like the ball points, the fountain pens and roller balls, this kit is the Statesman Junior tube from Craft Supply. The kit is $45, but it makes a nice fountain pen. And I sell these on my site for $135, and they sell well. So that's the fountain pen and the roller ball are both the same version of the kit. And they use 10.5 for the small end, 10.5 millimeter for the small end, and 12.5 millimeter for the large end. So use two different ones. So any questions so far? Got the hole drilled, okay? To glue it in. A lot of people will, okay, let's back up just a minute. The tubes, some people, especially on Penn State, you'll get the tube and it will be scuffed up. This is a smooth tube. There's different ways to scuff it up. One is to put it in the drill, but make sure you don't tighten it because the tube is not very strong, not very, yeah, it doesn't take much. So, and turn it around and do the same thing. Okay, so now it's scuffed up. Some people glue the tube in with CA glue. I've never tried it. You see a lot of on the forums that they have blowouts. The blank comes apart. You look at the tube and it doesn't look like there's any glue at all on the tube, or they put it in and they don't get it all the way in and it's already seized up. I use epoxy, and I have 15-minute epoxy and 5-minute. If I'm making, say, 2-4 pens at a time, I'll use the 5-minute. If I'm making, say, 8 or 10, I'll use the 15-minute. Mix it up. I use little spatula. This, just a little blank. I dip it in the glue and I put it in and back and forth. And then I will put the epoxy on the pen tube and put it in. And this is just used to, as I put it in, I'll turn it as I go. No, what I do with the two ends is Q-tip and wax, and I will get the wax on the Q-tip and put it inside both ends, and when it dries, when the glue dries, I have just a little, I think that might be from I'm not sure, rod, but after the glue has dried, you can use this, and I just grind a little angle on it, and you push it in, and you can push the glue out of the tube very easily. I've tried it a time or two. I think it's good, because the thing is with Gorilla Glue, it expands. And if you put it on inside and the tube and put it in, it's going to expand and fill up all of the bacon.
Like it, I have mixed emotions about it.
I do. I've used it a time or two. It cures with moisture. So if you do that, maybe you need to take your Q-tip, moisten it before you put it in. But yep, I've used it a time or two, but I haven't used it in a long time. I stick with the epoxy, and it has never failed me. Okay, I think one of these has, okay. And I just do that. Usually what I do before I run this is just to barely touch it to my sander. And that takes the glue off from the end. And then you can run this through it to clear the rest of the glue out. And now, once you do that, we need to trim it. Now, where's all my trimming tools? Oh, here it is. This is to trim the end. This is a carbide version. And you will have one of these for each size pin you make. This is 7mm. I bought a kit, and it did not have my 27/64. It has 7mm, 8mm, 3/8, and 10mm. So I had also bought one of these. This is it's an adapter. It goes over the 7mm, and the outside will fit in the tube. So it's a little less, it's a little not so easy as that by itself, because you have two pieces. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to buy one. Actually, I'm not, because I have a metal lathe, so I made one. But I didn't want to use that one because most people don't have a metal lathe. But I made one that fits this like that. So there's two ways. It's important to square the end. And some people will square it on sandpaper. But if you put that up against square here, and hit it on sandpaper, well, the hole may not have been drilled perfectly straight. So it'll be off. Then when you put it together, you're going to have a gap in one side of your pen. So, but to square the end, normally I will put it in the vise like that. After the tube is glued in, and I'll put this in the drill press and square it like that. Now, maybe it may not always, well, when this goes in here, you're getting it square, okay? But another way is to use a drill press, a hand drill, like this, and okay, you don't want to go too far. Okay, I have a little to go. I'm watching the brass tube.
Since you use the one nail push to one side, that's why you got more wood on the side.
Yes, right. If you when you line this up initially, you're probably lining it up with a blank like this. The center point is marked, and you line it up. Well, that'll drill everything this size will drill pretty well centered. But if you have one a little larger, a little smaller, then it might be offset, which is not a big deal. Okay, So now I'm down to the brass tube and go to the other end and do the same thing, and it's almost there anyway. Okay, so that has squared off the blank at the even with the brass tube. So, okay, the next item is to turn. And of course, making a pin, probably 5% is turning. Everything else is other parts of it. So I want to turn this, but before I do that, we'll talk about the turning. Probably most people use a mandrel. This is a standard pin turning mandrel. You probably start out with this mandrel, fits in here, and it has a brass finger nut on the end. So you would put your blanks on here, tighten it, run your tailstock up against here, and then turn it. And whether you have 1 or 2 piece pin blanks, that's one way to do it. Another way is using the same mandrel, and this basically is like this, except the threaded end is down here. And so I have this with nothing out, no threads out here. And they have what they call a mandrel saver. Okay, this fits in your tailstock. It's alive and goes in here. Now you can tighten it up to tighten against your pin blanks, and you can turn it. Okay, so there's another method, and this is the way I usually turn it. These 2 devices, this is your headstock, tailstock, live tailstock, and you put the bushings on here, as opposed to the, let me go get some bushings.
That's for a single blank. What happens if you got to try to turn 2?
Well, this way you would turn them 1 at a time. So, but, okay, these are, let's say, these are the bushings. And of course, anyone that hasn't turned a pin, you get a bushing that goes into the tube. And the outside of the bushing is the size of your pin. So you want to turn the blank to equal the outside of the bushing. So,
Or just a little bit of it.
little
Well, I have to say.
little greater because you want to sand it right. So here is the way you would turn it with the mandrel saver. Now you tighten it up and you can turn it.
The reason they call them mandrel savers, use the other way and it starts slipping. You have a tendency to tighten it.
Right.
And it bends.
If you turn with this and you tighten this and then you tighten your tailstock point on here, it can put a bow in it. And people have, of course, when you put a bow in it, then your blank is offset.
Get a barber deal pin.
Offset turning. There you go. Offset turning.
Bent pen, that'd be good.
So this would be another way to turn it. Or this is the way probably most people turn. And this is the way that I mentioned. I turn most of mine is this way.
Now, Penn State set up.
Pardon?
And that's for Penn State.
I think it is from Penn State. Maybe, maybe not.
I've been thinking about it.
I've looked at the one in the back of that. Charlie, can you hand me that book. Yes. Ultra shear. This is a new version, a different version, I should say, of the Pen Saver. So that looks pretty good. I don't know how it would work. If you look at this, you still got a little play in this area. This one is pretty well the same thing, but on the tailstock, the live tailstock. Okay, yes, that's that. And here's the different mandrels. So, but this one is the same as this one. And this one, the tailstock tightens up on the tube, on the mandrel. In the tailstock, the live tailstock, it's got a collet, and you tighten it, and then you don't have the movement. So that's something that you may want to look at. And one other method of turning is turning between centers. And some bushings will come with a like a 60-degree cut out. And I bought these turned between centers, and there's no hole in it. So these bushings have to be turned between center. And basically what it is you put this in the tube, and you use a dead center, 60-degree angle, and a live center. And that's probably going to be the most accurate method of turning. But I do use these bushings for this pen, this pen.
Definitely don't get any catch, they're just freewheel thing.
And basically they all, if you get a catch, they'll freewheel. So, but like I said, I'm going to use this method, one tube at a time. If you use the mandrel like this, you can do 2 tubes. And if you're doing this type of pen, you can make 2 pens at the same time. Or if you're doing the slim line or the comfort pen, you make 1 pen at the same time.
Helps you visualize it.
Right.
Once
Yep.
you've done as many as you have, you can look at it and tell.
So, any questions?
How many do you keep in stock? How often do you turn?
I've got a lot at home. They're,
So as you get the orders, you've got to stock.
I've got a stock, yeah. Now, I do Cedar of Lebanon. In fact, I didn't bring that, but I do Cedar of Lebanon pens from Montpelier. And I use the Sirocco. They usually order 10 or 12 at a time. And I've got a couple of other customers that order 10 or 12 at a time. Mount Vernon, I make pens for Mount Vernon out of about a 240-year-old Canadian hemlock and a 240-year-old white oak that fell up there. And they don't sell them in the shop. They use them for promotion activities. So I make bowls and pens for Mount Vernon. I make all kinds of stuff from Montpelier, and they just sell them in the shop. Dennis Hippen also turns items for Montpelier. So.
You got a question in line on where you get your fountain pens?
This fountain pen it's the Junior Statesman 2, and it's purchased from Craft Supply. $45 for the kit. So,
I was gonna mention, Sid Craft Supply, Penn State, I'm over the executive Penn. I used to always go to Penn State, and I got to look at Craft Supply. And they're probably close to $1 cheaper
mm.
from Craft Supply, same exact pen. And I asked Penn State about it, it's like, fine, so you went.
Yep,
They don't care.
right. So, okay, so we're going to turn the pin. And I'm going to use this method of turning, and I'm going to turn 2. If I use this, I could turn 2 at the same time, but I'm going to turn 1 at a time here. This is the 5%, right?
I hope that thing's big enough.
Well, I was wondering about that. Do we have any extra weight we can put on the bottom to make sure we don't have vibration? Yeah.
Hold it down for you. And then it can fit underneath there. Hold it down.
Do we have a smaller tool rest over here? Well, this is, I'm only turning that.
He doesn't have his 2-inch one.
Pardon?
He doesn't have his 2-inch one.
Oh, yeah, that's what I need.
Tailstock number 3-horse paper, and the other end is 2-horse. They buttered it all up. This is both number 2.
Right.
That's why Stark got rid of it.
Oh, you had number 3 horse taper
Yes.
on the tailstock?
On the tailstock.
Oh,
Get an adapter.
Yeah.
oh,
I don't know why they do that, but they do.
yeah.
You can buy a 3-2 adapter. Actually give you a little longer reach.
You ought to just get it back.
Okay. My standard old scraper.
Go fast.
And when you're turning pins, you know, you got a real tiny piece of wood. Probably want to turn your speed up pretty good. A lot of the pin turners will suggest using calipers to make sure you get it right. I use wrench, and this wrench fits the just right. So it's easier to use that to adjust calipers every time. I don't have a wrench for every version, but
Can you round off the very tips of the wrench so it doesn't grab?
no, this pretty well. I might have hit it with a file inside just a little to make it fit, but the ends were rounded off. This is one of those little cheap wrenches that comes with kits that you assemble.
And you can't find it if you didn't want that.
Right. And what I do, I use the this scraper, and this is the way I turn pins. So everybody else turns them differently. But a round nose scraper to get close, a flat, totally flat scraper will do the final shaping. And if okay, I need to go a little more. And like I said, I don't do hourglass. I don't put a lot of bulbs and stuff like that on it. So that's this first one turned.
Because a real wood turner uses skew.
Yes, and I have a skew, and I use it sometimes just like that. I put it flat on my tool rest, and I do the curve just like I did this one, and that's pretty smooth from that scraper. These blanks are pecan from the Mount Vernon, that big pecan tree at Mount Vernon that used to stand outside the mansion. This is from that pecan tree. The pecan tree was taken down in 2014, not because it had problems, but because they were concerned that if something did happen, they sure wouldn't want it to damage the building, the mansion, right? So these are the pecan. I'm gonna do two. So.
Dale, they call you every time they take down a tree?
Oh, they got a lot of trees down. I got an email from the guy that I work with is Dean Norton. And if you watch some of his stuff, he's the director of horticulture. The way I got to know him was a friend of mine had a lot of the pecan wood, and he gave me some of the pecan wood, and I made a chess set. A lot of you have seen my chess set, so I made a chess set out of it. Then Dean Norton sent an email to my friend and said, you know, my friend got a lot of the wood, that they're having their charity auction, and would he contribute some bowls? So my friend sent me an email, and I contributed the chess set for their charity auction. Well, they decided they would not sell it at the auction. And it wound up that Dean Norton, the director of horticulture, he started working at Mount Vernon at 16 years old, picking up papers and garbage. And he went to college at Virginia Tech and got his horticulture degree, I guess. And just last May, not this past May, but a year ago, I think, was his 50th anniversary working at Mount Vernon. And he got that chess set as one of his 50th anniversaries. So, and he's the guy that I work with, and he gives me the wood. So, okay, second turning.
We do that with each other, dear.
Yeah,
You should pass some of that wood around.
I have some of the pecan at home. And what I'm doing here is getting real close to the bushings, and then I do a final measurement with this.
One thing I do, is I have a little, B-block bandsaw, and I cut the corners off. Because some of this crazy wood we have, it tears out.
Yeah, and it doesn't grab like it was while I was turning. So I've never done that, but well, is it quicker to go to the bandsaw and do that, or is it quicker to turn the corners off here? Half and half. Right.
You can put it in there and just,
Okay, that's pretty well.
Talking about Woodstock courthouse, two maple trees cut down and so on. It's things like that, that local people really like.
Right. Yep.
if you find the guy that gave up.
The people like the
Good at doing that, but they cut down one of their pears in front of my in-laws' house. And I had to really, wait a minute, we're doing it on our property, almost hit our car. How about a section? Oh, okay. Like they're giving up the right arm or something.
On the lathe,
pardon?
are you sand any on the lathe?
Yes. Now, this is different from what most people do probably, but if you sand with your good ones, your good bushings, then you sand them down, and some of them say they have a groove in it that if you sand below the groove, then you should replace it. Well, what I have is a couple of old ones that I've actually ground down, or actually turned down. You can put this in a chuck, and you can actually turn it with carbide tools on your wood lathe. And what I've done is back probably 3/16 of an inch, I've turned it down almost to the size of well, in fact, the outside is the size of the tube. So these are what I use for sanding. So I save my good ones, and now I need to get my sandpaper. Brought my own. Okay, so put these back, put these on my lathe. And these are pretty smooth. They're quite smooth from that scraper. And I'll start off with about 240. Pardon? Make sure my size is right. Okay. Then I go to, okay, that's 240, 360. $500. And now I'll hit it with a couple of the Scotch Brite. And a lot of people say you should sand lengthways. And if you see any radial marks, yes. But if you've got it smooth, I've never had the problem. Oh, that's always a problem. Oh, man, I was trying to pick up something off the floor. Okay. So these are now ready to finish. And there's so many different finishes for pens. I think we sell the Pens Plus from Doctors. And Pens Plus, there's a lot of friction polish, and I guess that's a friction polish. And so there's a lot of different versions of friction polish. Another version is the melamine lacquer finish. The thing with most of those is people say they like to feel the wood and see the wood, and that's what those are good for. You see the wood.
Waxes, there's different stuff.
Yeah, different waxes and. Pardon? That's what I'm going to do. Is CA glue.
Those other ones don't last as long.
Right. These are all CA glue, and I have tried those others. I recently tried melamine lacquer, and I just don't get the same finish, and I don't like the finish I get. I've used CA for many years, and the latest CA I've been using, and I've used this for several years, is Mercury Flex. This is Mercury Flex Thin and Mercury Flex Medium. And what I'll do, depending on the wood, oak, like the Stonewall Jackson Prayer Tree wood, I'll put a couple of coats of thin, and it fills the pores. And then I'll put about 6 or 8 coats of medium on this pecan. I'll only put 1 thin because it's pretty tight grain. So 1 coat of thin will fill any possible grooves. And then I'll put up to 7 coats of this. Now, what I do is you'll see all the time people talk about the UCA glue to finish their pens, and they get their bushings stuck in their pens. Well, don't use it. You can buy, or I make, these. They're high density polyethylene bushings. Yeah, basically bushings. And I thought I had a complete set.
There's another one in there.
Okay, that's, oh, there it is. There it is. Okay, now what I'm going to do is to go to the mandrel saver. Because finishing, this way I can finish 2 at a time as opposed to 1 at a time. So I'm going to the mandrel with the mandrel saver and using the non-stick high density polyethylene bushings. You can buy them, or you can also, I make them. I have a lot of the polyethylene material, and you drill a 1/4 inch hole, turn it on the lathe, and that's what you've got. So one goes there, one of the blanks. I turn the center one. I don't know if you can buy that, but you could put 2 back to back of these. So and prevent CA drip on the bed. Ooh. Well, it does fit real well, but maybe you have a towel or something, a cloth towel. What I normally do, and it works okay on mine, is I just put this on the bed, but the headstock is in the way here, so that's what I need. Yep. So anyway, anything to block the CA from going on the bed. Okay. Well, I don't turn it fast enough to. Okay. And what I do, I think I'm going to have to. Okay. This is Viva paper towel, and I use Viva paper towel to put the finish on. And what I do is to fold it. Could have done this before, but I wanted to show you how I do it. Accelerator. I'll hit a little in the center, take some medium, a couple of drops, and that's held together to do the finish. Oops. This is Mercury Flex accelerator. I've tried it, Charlie. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Okay, I'm gonna use one coat of thin, and like I said, if you're using like oak or something with walnut with grain, a lot more grain pores in it, then you may want to use 2. But and you'll see some people say use 1 or 2 thins, 4 thicks, 2 more thins. I use thin to soak into the blank, and then I'll use medium to put on the rest of my finish. And It's running about 346 now. That's about the speed I run. I have a one-way 1224, and it does not have the RPM control on it. I just guess at it. That's about right. You don't want it fast enough where it slings it on you. And
I got spots all over my face.
yep. So that's about right. And I'll drop a few drops on the blank, go back and forth. And because I'm using the mandrel, I got both of them on here. I can finish 2 at a time. Okay, that's all I'm going to put on that. And usually that first coat, I don't put accelerator on. I'll hit it like that. Now I'm going, okay, first off, cut off the section that I used. And this is how I count how many coats I've got on it. Is I don't lose count because I always cut them off. Look down, I got 8 cutoffs. Okay, got 8 coats on it.
Did you figure out some logical reason for the numbers?
You want to have enough that when you sand it and polish it, you don't go through the CA back into the wood. So if you do that often, maybe you want to add a couple of coats. And I find 8 works well. Very, very seldom do I ever sand through it. But that's why, or that's where you, that's how I decide how many coats to put on it. And a lot of it depends on how thick the coats are too.
Then you hit with the accelerator every coat.
Now I hit it with the accelerator. And what I do is stand back. And that's all I do.
I've heard some people say that makes it brittle.
Mine seems to work okay. I haven't had the problem. So now I'll cut that off. And you can go straight to the next coat.
Right.
Ooh, I don't.
Once in a while, I make a pen from rifle shells. The 30-30 shell is exactly 2 inches long. You can make one of these comfort pens. Shoot 2 of them. With the boxing, you gotta fill it in because it's the neck of it is just right for the 7mm.
308 works good too, Charlie.
That's the same thing, yeah.
Very similar.
And there's a little different.
The
Finishing brass is a little different from wood.
the fumes of the CA does bother me. So normally at home, I will put my dust collector right here and suck it in. And I also wear the gas mask with the chemical filters on it. Because the
I got one of those, I never used it.
Hadn't killed you yet,
Oh, he's
So-
60 years old. and we can do all that.
What? He's 39 and 39 years old yet. Hasn't killed him yet. He's only 39.
You don't get any SCA on your hands?
No, it doesn't soak through the,
But if you need, do we sell that? You need that,
we don't sell the mercury, this CA.
So we have a different. You should have one at home because you do, when you get glued together or something. Oh, I've got the debonder. Yeah, that's what you're asking. Yeah, I've got it. Yeah.
Well, or acetone. Acetone will do it. Yep. The one time I was doing this or something, and you know, you're supposed to really watch your eyes. And generally doing this, I just use my glasses. But some reason I took my glasses off, and I think Q-tip or something was laying on the lathe, and I was through, and I reached down, picked up the Q-tip, and it popped, and it threw a bit of CA right in my eye. And I wound up going to the eye doctor, and it was okay. But be careful. Be careful with the CA. Okay, I've got 8 coats on it. Put a couple of extra.
Yeah, because CA is good stuff. My wife just had a knee replacement and they internally use some dissolving stitches.
Oh,
to seal it up. They use CA.
I've heard that CA was developed for the medical industry.
He said it's a lot quicker and it's a lot more sterile.
And they
It doesn't have the same,
put a wound together, put CA on it.
you know, they don't have the same point exothermic as this does, but it still works.
Okay.
2 hours for stitches. All I did was put CA on it. I could have done that at home.
And people do. People do. You get a little cut and they'll use CA. And
But it does for,
It
goes
goes
for-
yeah.
CA, my wife is all the time, she uses
Okay.
CA. Got any CA down there?
Okay. Now, when I pull that off, these are stick a little bit. Okay. You see a little bit of CA on each end of these. Okay. Now back to the. Okay. Now we're going to take off. Whoops. There's my centerpiece. Just take off the CA, very easy. Down to the tube. And there's that. At this point, the CA still is a little bit soft, even though I put accelerator on it. It's still soft enough and it's flexible anyway. So it's still soft enough that it doesn't chip out. Okay.
is also where those underlying layers still have a little unsecured hanging glue to you.
Okay, so now these are ready to finish. And I use waterproof sandpaper. So I've got, pardon? Some people will use micro mesh. There's 9 different micro mesh. So they'll sand it with like 400 grit and 600, and then go to micro mesh, go through 9 micro mesh sandings. I use right here, I usually use 3. I've got 4 here now. 400 grit, 800, 1200, and 2000, which based on Charlie's calculation, that is 4,400 grit. Yep. So we'll get some water. Pardon? What, Charlie? Okay, now I can put it back on the mandrel. Another thing is use those other I can use these versions with those special bushings, and but that way I have to do 1 at a time. This way I can do 2 at a time. Waterproof, it's water moisture sand, what do you call it? It's sandpaper that works in water. And when you use water sandpaper, if you use regular sandpaper on anything, it gums up. You use water with it, it doesn't gum up, and it keeps it clean.
It's a separate sandpaper.
It's a special sandpaper.
It's automotive.
Well, it's like I've got 400, 800, 1200, and 2000. Plus I have a 240 water base sandpaper. Your sandpaper doesn't clog up with sanding grit. Okay, I started off just a little bit with 240, but now I'm going to the 400. And yes, yes. Always wipe in between your different grits, because if you sand with 400 and then go to 800 and don't wipe it off, you're still got 400 grits, scratches. Right. So, and what I do with the 400, the first version of sandpaper, when you look at the blank, you can see shiny places where it hasn't been sanded. Where it has been sanded, you will see dull. And you want to sand it to the point that you get most of the shiny places out before you go on to the next version. Yeah, it's when you put the finish on, you have hills and valleys, and you've got to sand off the hills down to the valley. All you have to do is to dip your sandpaper in the water, and basically it creates a slurry as you're sanding. Okay, still going, but Okay, almost there.
Actually, once you do this, you're gonna, the next couple of bricks are
Just hit it. Yep. You get it almost all of your shiny portions out. And then the next one is next 2 or 3 levels is going to be very easy. If you have 1 or 2 shiny places left, tiny ones, then your 800 will probably get those pretty good.
You ever go to the real fine Scotch yard?
No. Oh, I'm going to 800.
800 still
Okay. I always use the wet and dry sandpaper. Oh, this paper is called wet and dry. So if you're buying it, you just ask for wet and dry sandpaper. Okay. That was 800. Now I'm going to 1200. And these, you just need to hit it just very few seconds. 2000. It would work just going to the 1200. Okay. Now, that's probably pretty close to what a friction polish would look like now. And if you go higher, you get a better shine to it, but not the shine that I like. So the next step, Meguiar ultimate compound polish compound, and that's what I use to put my final polish on it. And pardon? You buy it, it's automotive polish, and I use I had an old blanket. I cut all my pads from an old blanket. You could use this as well. Whoops, overdid it, but it's still okay. Oh, now we gotta pick it up again. Oh, that's, yeah, like you read where somebody drops something and they say, now they got to decide whether they really need it or they can just leave it on the floor. Okay, I'm gonna hit one more time. Thank you. Okay, if anyone wants to look at that while I get my next step set up. It has some, it's got some wood on it. It's not the thin wood like you will see on the slim lines.
Now, do you use the?
Okay, now we're going to put it together. No, because I think it's smoother now. If you hit it with the buffing system, it's going to put tiny grooves in it. You probably can't see, but
I use a long shaft, put 3 blanks on, and I just.
oh,
I
okay.
don't do it
They're
like
not
you do
tight.
on there.
So
Uh-huh.
Spin on there.
Yeah, it's spin.
Okay.
And you do it.
Okay, so that's my finish. And it's surprised it turned out that good during the demo, but it turned out okay. Yeah, right. Okay, there's to put it together. I have a tool which is designed to put pins together. You put your pin here, press it. You can move these in or out depending on, and I use it for this. I use it for these. The pin I'm doing now, I don't use this. There's another, if you don't want to spend the money on that, you can buy a set of these. These will fit in the headstock and tailstock of your lathe, and you can press it together there, which is, cheaper, much cheaper than buying this. Another way is to use your drill press. You can like clamp a board in your drill press, put a bit in it, just put a little dimple there, and then maybe put something in your chuck so you can press it up and down. Okay, and that works fine. I've come up with sort of a hybrid method that I use. It's using this on the headstock, but it's using this on the tailstock, and I'll show you that. Oh. Like that. Yeah, there's all kinds of manufacturers of that. Okay. Okay. Wayne uses the lathe. I use the lathe for this pin. I use that for some of the other pins. Okay.
Once you've got it, it lasts forever.
Right.
Go through
Yeah. We will dump the pins.
when you have to read the directions.
Pardon?
You have to read the
Oh,
directions. They tell
I
you.
forgot the directions. What am I going to do? The reason I don't use this when I'm putting together this is it sticks out. It's not close here, and it sticks out, so you have to be very careful that you get it straight. This gets it straight. And when you're putting your pin together, you might want to look at the best end to put at the tip. Okay, and this Okay. This is what I use when I'm cleaning out the ends. Okay, it fits right on there. That right on there, and that's solid. I'm gonna move, put it there. Bring this up and press it in. Okay, then off. Next is going to be the clip, the top part. And you might want to see where, if you want to hide anything with the clip, in there, which I've been known to do that as well. Okay. By leaving this little, just little nylon thing on, then you're not. Okay, and now. Okay. Feels pretty good, feels pretty close. And now, little transmission screws in. Put the top on. Sometimes it's not always easy to get it in the right place. Well, there it is. And screw the tip on.
Now, do you ever have to disassemble those pins?
I don't.
I have, and it's not.
Well, I've taken them apart to use these,
Yeah.
but I don't reuse it with the same. I'm thinking that if you press this in, then you take it out, well, you already expanded the brass.
Yeah.
And I would not trust going in the second time. Okay, there's one pin. Okay.
Yeah, they sell this nice set of disassembling
Well,
tools.
you know, if you get
Buy
the
same set.
if you get the transfer punch, in fact, if you look at some of those disassembled sets, they're transfer punches with a different name on it. And I have a set of transfer punches.
He'll sell it.
I got a set from Sarah many, many years ago.
Yeah, I've got a set that I've had a long time that I bought as transfer punches. And that's what I use.
It's a nice weight.
What is a transfer punch?
It's a punch that has a nib on the end in the very center, and you put it through a hole, and like in a piece of metal, you put it through a hole, like a 3/8 inch hole. When it's on the another piece that you're trying to find the place to drill. So you put it through the top, hit it, and now it puts the center, exactly center of the hole in the second piece.
Somebody's just figured out the transfer.
Yeah,
punch,
and
they
you
sell
get a
it.
set of transfer punches, and probably 20, 25.
You catch Harbor Freight on one of their sales, and they used to.
Yeah.
5% off G-Block all the time.
They don't anymore.
No, not as much. Now they want you to rack up or whatever it is. And I have that every year. They'll send you emails.
I get an email at least once a day.
Oh, yeah.
If you're on their list.
You don't have to find out, but you just go in there, give them your email. They're not gonna. Can you take that apart if you're running out of paint, or do people usually not even? It's a refill.
No, it's a standard refill. Yeah, it's a standard Parker refill. You can get, you know, any number of refills.
The only thing is, the pins you get from Penn State or Craft are not Parker manufactured.
Yeah, they're cheap, cheapos.
Last quite as
basically sample pens.
But they do tell you what refills. go in.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
this one is a pretty good refill. This is Buford Inc. UK.
Oh, it's more expensive.
I like the Schmidt 9000. That's a really good refill. Schmidt is German made, of course.
Yeah, the one pen I had it, everybody said, yeah, you get the. And a friend of mine gave me one of those different one here. And I had to go
Okay.
buy the refill.
Number two, if oh, Peter. That one is for you.
Well, thank you, sir.
That's for all of your shop.
Wear it with I'll put my own down.
Of course, if anyone wants to buy this one, then, pardon? Yeah, right. But if anyone wants to buy it, then the proceeds can go to the shop.
The starting bid is
25.
What is your Etsy shop name?
Pardon?
What is the name of your Etsy shop?
Etsy shop, D. Winburn.
Okay.
Just D. Winburn. Okay, got a $25 bid on it. Anyone else?
Nice job.
Okay.
I like this too. That's
that I can take to
good.
my wife.
Gail,
And-
what was,
This is one that my son bought me. It's a resin. It's a like Wayne does.
it shows what it is.
Yes. Okay, that Peter,
That's for the.
that's for this pen that goes to the club.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So how hard was that?
It's not too hard.
You got all of your-
I have a little
Your jigs. Yeah,
jig
yeah.
and cut it 45 degree, put the one in, glue
It's
it
like
together.
making a
Yeah, and then do,
bowling pin.
right, yes. It's 45 degrees.
Dale, really beautiful.
This one's harder. It's got the black,
Did you glue those together first?
glue those together first. The one thing you want to make sure when you're doing that is that the insert is exactly the same thickness as your saw blade.
Now, where, this is your coloring on that, right?
No, this is just,
That's where they used to have a lot of different thickness.
Okay.
so up there.
okay, great.
It was nice seeing you all.
Thanks.
All right.
This is a